Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed the top gold, silver, and cryptocurrency stories for the week ended April 15th, 2018, gold, silver, and cryptos rise on geopolitical and domestic turmoil. Bitcoin soars 15% in 15 minutes earlier this week, and the Bitcoin pumping recommences. Bitcoin 20,000, Bitcoin 200,000, and so on. Mueller, through the Southern District of New York, conducts discovery with a raid on Trump's attorney's office and home. Turkey enters the top 10 gold holding nations, and Trump sends another round of missiles into Syria. Gold and silver rose, and Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, well, he might be impeached. The Inspector General report came out, releasing a very damning report on Andrew McCabe, who resigned earlier this year. And Comey actually was fired. He took a leave of absence and then he was fired. Comey releases a book and Trump responds, and China blinks on tariffs. These are some of the stories that we will be covering today. So let's take a look first at the gold and silver action during the week. So people are panic buying gold after Donald Trump threatens war with Russia. Well, he threatened war with Syria, but I suppose since Russia backed Syria, it was the same thing. And we did see gold and silver rise, and FOMC meetings, Federal Reserve Open Market Committee minutes, showing all in favor of a faster pace of rate hikes and a view that GDP will be increasing, and that did put somewhat of a damper on the gold and silver gains during the week. Gold, however, did finish higher, up almost 1% at 1344.6, up from $1,333 an ounce. And silver managed to climb almost 2% to 16.63 an ounce. Gold-silver ratio came down slightly, down to 80.19, and it reached a high of 82.7 earlier late last week. Let's move on now to the top stories. So just a reminder, moronic of this week is out. It's 28 minutes of somewhat moronic and somewhat ridiculous things that happened during the week. Be sure to check that out. Also, Smaulgld was on future money trends. I've put a link here. You can check that out. And also, Smaulgld was on the Daily Coin during the past week. Now, quickly, Trump's lawyer's office was raided. We covered this in a separate video. I'm not going to go through this part of the raid. That you can check out the analysis in a blog post in YouTube and BitChute that I did called Feds Raid Trump's Attorney's Offices, What's Next? Let's move on to what's been happening since, and it looks like Rosenstein personally approved the FBI raid against Trump's lawyer. He is the Deputy Attorney General who also appointed the Special Prosecutor, Robert Mueller. Now this raid is really unprecedented because normally these types of raids are saved for violent criminals, flight risks, when there's going to be a real threat to the public if this evidence is not seized immediately. And it's usually threat of physical violence or real harm to the community. But it looks like here they've expanded this to find out some campaign finance violation or something to do with Stormy Daniels. Really an outrageous, I think, abuse of power just to get at Donald Trump's lawyer. Yeah, and here's because what they're talking about is, I thought this whole investigation was about Russian collusion, and I suppose Rosenstein and Mueller realized that they couldn't authorize themselves to go after Trump's attorney for Stormy Daniels or anything else, or his financial records, so they used the Southern District of New York. So basically, this has turned into an entire investigation to see what they can find to get rid of Donald Trump and to prosecute him. Now, on the other side, the reason this is even more troubling is Rosenstein and Comey and Mueller are all involved in the FISA abuse, meaning that they were the ones looking into the Trump collusion, or they had him under surveillance, They did that on the basis of the Steele dossier, which is obtained from a foreign agent, a British agent, who obtained his information from Russians. So if there's any Russian collusion, it sounds like they were involved, and yet they're investigating. So there's talk now that if Sessions recused himself simply for talking to a Russian during the campaign at a public event, then Rosenstein shouldn't be anywhere near this investigation because he was involved in and signed off on some of the surveillance. McCabe is gone, not just for lying, but also he was involved in the Hillary Clinton investigation and helped exonerate her, as did Mr. Comey. So Rosenstein is having Mueller report to him, which really doesn't make much sense. Now, Rosenstein may not get fired. I don't think Trump is going to fire any of them, but it looks like Rosenstein has been dragging his heels on producing documents for the Congress, and Jim Jordan's, Sessions, Rosenstein need to be held accountable. And it looks like they have demanded documents and have asked for them by Monday. And if not, there are some that are saying that they have drafted up articles of impeachment. Now, that would probably be politically better to do than if Trump were to fire any of them. I don't think Trump is going to fire any of them. And here you go. This guy makes a good point. What does an Access Hollywood tape have to do with Russia collusion? This investigation is a fishing expedition, and it certainly is. Now, what I think happened is the reason they raided Cohen's office was not necessarily to prosecute Trump directly, knowing that a lot of the information that they gathered would be under the attorney-client privilege, and they figured some of it they can probably say isn't attorney-client privilege, but basically is to do discovery on Donald Trump in a way that they otherwise couldn't do. They couldn't subpoena his documents. They could, but they really have no basis to ask for all of his records, all of his conversations over the last 20 years. And this was a way of grabbing all of it from his attorney and basically doing the due diligence, doing the discovery, their opposition research, however you want to call it. And now they have that information. They can look at it. It can not be unseen. And clearly, if procedures are not put in place, some of this is going to leak. And that's exactly what they want. And even if it doesn't leak, it can give them information or ideas on how else to pursue Trump. So even though they may not be able to use the evidence that they have or seized against him directly, they can use it to leak information to the press to make him look bad and put it out there without context. Or it could form the basis of some other investigation that they wish to do. So it seems like Trump is in for a lot of investigation, and there will be a lot of leaks. Now, what Trump needs to do is not to fire anybody, but really needs to focus on having Rosenstein recuse himself or be impeached, because he shouldn't be on the case. Comey needs to be prosecuted for leaking information, basically, and for the way he handled the Clinton investigation. It's obvious to anyone with a legal degree and that's not biased, or anyone who's just half paying attention, that he had mountains of evidence and went out of his way to exonerate Hillary Clinton. And he even admitted later on, just the other day in the television interview, that the only reason when they found out there were an additional 30,000 emails on Anthony Weiner's server, the only reason they reopened the case was because he was concerned if he didn't, that's what he told Stephanopoulos, that there would be concern that she wasn't legitimately elected. So you could see he had in his mind, he wanted to make sure he at least could say, well, we looked at that and there's nothing there, because he knew that he can always throw those 30,000 emails into the same pile of all the other evidence he looked at and say, yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. Yeah, it was classified, but I already said she didn't mean any of this stuff. So no reasonable prosecutor would be in a case, but don't say we didn't look at it and let's move on. Now, it's possible that him reopening the case by Comey, may have cost her the election. That's why the Clinton people were supposedly against him for that, but he actually helped her out in the first place by making sure she didn't get thrown in jail. And he was actually also, now he admits, trying to help her by saying, look, if I reopen the case and I say I looked at it, there would be no shadow cast over a Hillary Clinton presidency. Meanwhile, we know they were working on, if Trump did win, that there would be a shadow cast over his presidency because he colluded with the Russians. And then here's the kicker. What Comey said, not only did he say the reason he looked at this stuff was because the emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop was not only because he was concerned that if he didn't, that people would claim that her presidency was illegitimate. He was asked if he thought that Hillary would have lost as a result, would he have still looked at them? And he basically said, I don't know, which means in both instances, he wasn't looking at the documents on Anthony Weiner's laptop for the purposes of actually doing an investigation. He was looking at the laptop information solely for the reason of positioning it for how Hillary Clinton might look if she won. And then he even admitted, and if he knew she was going to lose because he looked at it, he might not have then reopened the case. Now that to me is pretty self-incriminating. It's as incriminating as when he said that he had leaked his memos of his meetings with Donald Trump to a friend such that he could leak them to the New York Times so that there would be pressure to appoint a special counsel. He's blatantly saying, we wanted to get rid of Trump, and this is how I did it. I met with him, and I took memos, and then I leaked those memos to a friend. I mean, that's all illegal. I don't know how he's getting away with it. And not only is it illegal, it shows intent. It's not just, oh, here's some memos. It was basically done, and he admitted the intent of which he did it was to get a special counsel. And they got a special counsel. Well, Trump attacked Syria, and nothing new there. It was telegraphed it was going to happen. He did this last year. These one-day missile strikes. They send 100 plus, 200 plus missiles into Syria. They claim mission accomplished until they have to do it again. I don't have much to say about it. The only question I have is when you have these chemical weapons, supposedly these munitions are bombed, I'm not sure maybe somebody can help me with this because I don't know. When you bomb chemical weapons munitions, don't you run the risk of releasing all those chemical weapons and doing far more damage to the area than if they had actually been just launched one at a time? But Trump is claiming mission accomplished. I like what now, here's Ted Lieu. He's saying use of force by Trump against Syria is unconstitutional. This is not self-defense, and no AUMF covers it. Use of chemical weapons is horrific, but our Constitution does not allow POTUS to attack a country which has not attacked the U.S. without congressional approval. Well, thanks for noticing, but this is nothing new. No president since FDR has requested a declaration of war from Congress. So I'm glad he's finally picking up on it, that Trump is doing stuff that he is not really authorized, although you could argue under the War Powers Act, but I don't want to get into that right now. Let's move on to Trump and trade. He says he's going to take down some trade barriers, deal on IP. So it looks like China is easing up on the tariffs on U.S. and willing to work with Trump on the IP. And basically, things seem to be going the way of the United States. And the idea here isn't to crush China, and China's concept is not to crush the dollar. The idea is to get a more balanced trade between the two countries. And here he's saying a car is sent to the United States from China. We charge them 2.5%, but when the U.S. sends a car to China, there's a 25% trade. Now, that doesn't make sense. And so when people say they're against tariffs, yes, but the point is that there already are tariffs on U.S. goods going into China. And Donald Trump predicts China will buckle first as the world's largest economies teeter on the brink of a trade war. And now they're saying, and this got debunked, or at least by China later in the week, there's two things China could do, actually three things China can do. One is they can do a devaluation of the yuan, which they claim they have ruled out. The other is they can, quote, dump treasuries. They claim they have ruled that out too. And the third is they can withhold rare earth metals, which they have used in the past, I think. But now, as you'll see later, Japan has found a massive trove of these rare earth metals. So I'm not sure what China is going to do. I don't think China wants to do anything dramatic, which would, of course, harm their economies. The way I look at this is China is a 100% managed, centrally planned economy. They don't have in their models, nor because they couldn't actually figure out exactly what would happen if they made a dramatic move. Right now, they have these are very smart people. The people that run China are not the same buffoons that run the U.S. economy, because people in the United States can get elected just by getting elected, and then they generate policy. The people that run the Chinese government, they're all the top of their class. That's how they get there. So there is a bit of a meritocracy. So they think they're smart, and they think they can plan their economy, and they really know that they can't plan their economy around nuclear events. So they're counting on getting the money that they get from U.S. trade. They don't want to destroy that. They can model out how much they can lose. They can model out, well, we can reduce taxes domestically to make up for the potential loss. So I would think you're just going to see the concessions on the part of the Chinese, whereby they lower the tariffs on U.S. products in response to any tariffs that the U.S. may raise on their products. And then eventually I think the two sides will come to an agreement that they'll just lower tariffs on both sides. So that's the free trade. Now, interestingly enough, 2/3 of Americans support tariffs on China. Not sure where the Americans support Trump on the Syrian bombs. Now, last time I think the reaction was against, and it seems if they just do these one-off flurry of bombs, people seem to forget. And I saw, and you can't really tell whether these polls are correct, Fox had a poll out originally with 65-35 against, and then it was 65-35 for. Who knows? I know that the people that are against are going to be more vocal than the people who are for. And here is, we've talked about these guys before, Tolling and the Genoa. They believe that the Democrats have weaponized the FBI, the CIA, the IRS, and every other government agency and filled them with political assassins. Remember, they are advising Trump. Now, Dershowitz is an interesting character. Dershowitz is a left-leaning person. He didn't vote for Trump. He was on the board of the ACLU, and he is appalled by this raid on Trump's attorney as well. He had dinner with the president. Now, interestingly, he had dinner with the president. He says it was pre-planned. It had nothing to do with this raid. It was really to talk about the Middle East. So it's possible that Dershowitz is sticking his 2 cents in on Syria. Now, he didn't comment on that. Everybody wanted to talk to him about what he might have to say about this raid, and maybe he's advising Trump on that. Appears he was actually advising Trump on Syria. At least that's what he said in one of the interviews that I saw with him. But he is right in that he actually wrote an op-ed too. These types of tactics, when you cheer them on, the precedent is so bad, because that just means once you have political enemies, they're going to have precedent just to go raid you, raid your offices, raid your lawyers' offices, just because they're against you. And if you have a vocal, even a minority that's against Trump, they're going to cheer on, a very powerful vocal minority, they're going to cheer on this type of tactic. And Trump's initial reaction was, why don't I just fire Mueller? Well, I think it's a disgrace what's going on. We'll see what happens. Again, they found nothing. So they're trying to goad him into firing. Firing doesn't accomplish anything other than you feel good when it happens. But I think they're going to allow this to go on and play out in the court of public opinion. And the longer it goes on, and the longer it has nothing to do with Russian collusion, you can start making the case that this is indeed a witch hunt. Even if they do find stuff that has nothing to do with Russia, still, it appears that that's what it is. It's definitely a hunt to try to find something. And here we have the PBOC, governor ruling out currency depreciation in Chinese trade war. Now, if they ruled it out, they don't want to be later turned out to be a liar if they have to do a devaluation. So that means they're planning something else. They're planning to figure out their cash flow. They're planning to figure out all their internal mechanisms, their employment, their inflation rate, their GDP estimates, and they're going to try to come up with something that doesn't involve a devaluation. So My problem, no matter how smart you are, you cannot plan an economy. It only works for so long. And eventually, the overall market does things, throws you for a loop. However, given that the overall economy is not made up of entirely free actors, it's possible that the PBOC and all the other central banks, they can, to a certain extent, manufacture an outcome. So China is saying they're going to take measures in opening up. So China winning trade war, Chinese President Xi Jinping promises to cut car import tariffs and open economy. So that is a win for the United States. It's also a win for China. Why should they? I mean, if they don't make enough cars, they don't make good cars, why not take some U.S. cars? Why charge 25%? And he pledges to open the economy, and the stock market took off as a result of that. Now here's interesting. This guy, Robert Mueller, he's been involved in a lot of shady deals. Here he is with Paul Manafort, working with the Ukraine president. He's been involved with Whitey Bulger, supposedly. He's botched a few cases in the past. The thing I've heard about Mueller is not so much that he's partisan, but that basically, if you assign him to go get somebody, he's going to go get them. Even if he gets the wrong man, he did the same. He did that in the anthrax case after 9/11. He prosecuted someone for 4 years. Person had nothing to do with it, but at least Cohen had a scalp. And here's another one. Did Mueller, Comey, and Rosenstein cover up $37 million in missing Clinton Foundation cash raised for Haiti earthquake relief? These people are too entrenched. This is what you're going to get, even if you have honest people, if you have absolute power, you have the old Lord Acton, absolute power corrupts absolutely. If these three guys have been around for decades, all working for the Clintons, and they think they can get away with stuff because they are the law, might happen. You know, there's more than a 50-50 chance, no matter who's involved. Those three people, if they have that amount of power, they may start to just do things that they know they can get away with it. There's more on the seizing of the documents, and there's Cohen having this. Interesting. Now, Mueller's investigating this guy, this Ukrainian guy, for donating $150,000 to Trump, but this guy supposedly donated $13 million to the Clinton Foundation. Now, the Clinton Foundation was a worldwide, I don't know if it's a money laundering operation, but it clearly took in millions of dollars solely because it was expecting favors from the Clinton, especially when she was Secretary of State, and then she was going to be president. And surprise, surprise, she doesn't become president, and the donations stop, and they close the thing down. And there's the guy who gave $150,000. All right. And we talked about this in Veronica. The senators saying they're going to introduce legislation to protect Mueller is foolish because legislation has to be signed by the president. He's not going to sign it, and they're not going to override his veto, and he's not going to fire Mueller anyway, so it's a big waste of time. Here's a DOJ gives House Intel original documents that prompted Russia investigation. So the Intel Committee now has some documents, and probably more will come out. There'll be another Republican memo. Not sure what's going to come out. And here's Trump saying, if I wanted to fire Mueller in December, as reported by the failing New York Times, I would have fired him. Just more failing fake news from a biased newspaper. But now, when Comey released his book early in the week, it was a kiss and tell type book, basically. Nothing new, but almost, I would say, high school gossip column saying, I met Trump, he's got bags under his eyes, he's got puffy, he's got red hair, he's got not so small hands. Who cares? But Trump, being the master troller that is, says James Comey is a proven leaker and liar. Virtually everyone in Washington thought he should be fired for the terrible job he did until he was, in fact, fired. He leaked classified information, as I mentioned, regarding the meetings that he had with Trump, for which he should be prosecuted. He lied to Congress under oath. What he's talking about there is Comey asked whether he had ever leaked information. This was before he leaked the Trump meetings minutes or memos to his friend. He was asked if he had ever leaked or had anyone else knowledge of anybody else leaking information, and he said no. Well, we know that's not true because McCabe actually leaked information that was all in the Inspector General's report, and he did it with, according to McCabe, with full knowledge of Comey. Now, that information that was leaked in that instance was there to make McCabe look good, and because he was worried about the appearance of a conflict with the Clintons, and so he released that information. Of course, Comey has the same issue. with appearing to be too close to the Clintons as well. He's weak and untruthful slimeball, who was at the time has proven, as time has proven, a terrible director of the FBI. His handling of the crooked Hillary Clinton case and the events surrounding will down as one of the worst botched jobs in history, and it was my great honor to fire James Comey. So Trump doing his normal attack on Comey. Now here he says, DOJ, well, he's talking about the Inspector General report, just issued the McCabe report, which is a total disaster. He lied. McCabe was totally controlled by Comey, which is probably true. McCabe is Comey, no collusion, all made up by this den of thieves. And we see the raid on Trump's attorney turns up more non-Russian collusion information. And Trump, as mentioned in his tweet there, wants Comey prosecuted for leaking classified information. And as I mentioned earlier, this wasn't lost on Trump, that what Comey's reaction or response to Stephanopoulos' question about why he opened the investigation 2 weeks before the election into the newly found emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop. And he basically said to make sure that Hillary looked good, and I might not have done it if I knew she would have lost. And Trump now says, unbelievably, James Comey states that polls where crooked Hillary was leading were a factor in handling stupidly of the Clinton email probe. In other words, he was making decisions based on the fact that he thought she was going to win and he wanted a job. Slimeball. Well, I'm not sure if it's necessary that he wanted a job. He's that he wanted her to win, and he was making decisions based on making Hillary look good. And that is not what you would expect from the... He admitted it. This isn't Trump's characterization. That's not what you want from the head of the FBI. You want him to prosecute fairly if there is prosecution that's necessary, or you want him to exonerate on the basis of the facts that the person deserves to be exonerated. But here, clearly, he exonerated Hillary, and the only reason he even re-looked at the information, and he did it in a week, 30,000 emails, the only reason he looked at the Weiner laptop was because he just wanted to make sure that he had taken a look at it so that she would look good if she became president. And of course, he would stay on as Attorney General. So I say Comey has at least self-incriminated himself twice to Congress. He leaked classified information to a friend, to the New York Times, to get a special counsel. And on his TV interview, he basically said, I only reopened the Clinton investigation so it would appear legitimate. It wouldn't appear illegitimate if she won. And he says, I don't know what I would have done if I thought she was losing. Well, that's a bad answer. You didn't have to say that. He could have said, no, I looked at it because it deserved to be looked at. It needed to be looked at, and I looked at it, and there was nothing there. Instead, he says, no, I looked at it to make sure that I could say I looked at it so Hillary would be exonerated. And if I knew it was going to screw up the election for her, I might not have done it. What kind of, it's easy. He's a moron, or he's just rubbing people's noses in it. So articles of impeachment, we'll see where that goes. Drafted for Rosenstein. He's supposed to send over documents. It's interesting. These guys can't spend the time to get documents to Congress when they're requested, but yet they have time to write books. They have time in a week to read 30,000 emails, supposedly, on Anthony Weiner's laptop. It's all a farce. All right, so the IG report was issued, and it just made McCabe look like they called him lack of candor. A lot of the things, you can read the report. Basically, he was fired because internally they felt he should be fired. That's why he was. Here's good news. House Speaker Ryan to retire this year. We'll see what happens. But, you know, he raised $11 million in the first quarter of 2018. Now, what was that for? Didn't he know he was going to retire? I think he's had enough. But then Ryan thinks that this guy, Kevin McCarthy from California, should be a successor. We'll see where that goes. Of course, that would be a way of the Republicans still retaining that wing of the party, retaining control, the Rhino wing, over the Republican Party. And China's saying they're going to win the battle against financial risk. Just a quick note, $237 trillion worth of debt in the system. But, interesting here, Norway, Canada, Sweden, and China, their pre-crisis debt levels have risen. It's the point I constantly make about China. China is not this prudent. They always talk about the U.S. debt, but it's China that's really increasing its debt at a very rapid rate. Gold back petro yuan. Well, that story's gone away. The latest story that they're pumping is that they've introduced legislation to make the dollar a unit of gold. That's never going to pass. And the other one is the commitment of traders never happened before. Silver set to skyrocket. Okay. China's engaged in large-scale theft of American research technologies from universities using spies, students, researchers as collectors. And this story says the Chinese government has decreed that all scientific data generated in China, or probably stolen from overseas, must be submitted to the government-sanctioned data centers before appearing in publications. So this idea that this is an open and free society, I don't get how they even come up with it. China doesn't say they're open and free. China says they're just doing what they need to do for their country. There was a company with a lot of promise, and then the Chinese customer stole its technology. There's civil rights in China. I am gay, not a pervert. Furor erupts in China as Sino Weibo bans gay content. Nice. Gold back yuan, Russia to crush the dollar, end of dollar hegemony, and the ruble has turned to rubble as a result of these sanctions. All right, Iran vows to end Iran's black market, spurs rush for dollars, end of dollar hegemony. Venezuela, the ones with the petro, and the ones who are accepting the Chinese yuan for their oil. Inflation, 454% in the first quarter. Now, Turkey, gold reserves. Those of you who've been familiar with the charts I produce, you've seen number 10 has been India with 557.7 tons for the last 10 years or so. Turkey's recent additions pushed them into the top 10 at 582.2 tons. We'll see how far they go with their gold purchases. That makes them, Russia and China, the only dynamic movers in the top 10. The rest of the countries don't buy or sell in the last few years, other than Germany, who sells a small amount each year to the federal government to make gold coins. Facebook, Zuckerberg was on Capitol Hill talking about, he didn't have answers that were acceptable. He couldn't define hate speech. He couldn't define why certain, why conservatives had been banned, and he couldn't come up with any instances where any liberal groups had been banned. And, of course, the committees in Congress get campaign contributions from Zuckerberg, although what's interesting is both Democrats and Republicans are supposedly against Zuckerberg now, partially because Zuckerberg allowed Cambridge Analytica to mine its data to help Donald Trump in the election. But of course, they were more than happy when the Obama campaign was allowed to do so in 2012 and 2008. Back to cryptocurrencies, it looks like George Soros is supposedly getting into cryptos, Rockefellers. That may explain some of the recent big moves in cryptocurrencies. We saw, as we mentioned, a 15% rise in about 15 minutes or half an hour early in the week in Bitcoin. It rose from about 6,800 to 7,800. Right now, I think it's about 8,300. And all the pumpers are coming back out of the woodwork. It's going back to 20,000. There was a Bitcoin heist of 3 million reported by India's CoinSecure. Supposedly, they think the owner just took off with the money. So the other reason they think is tax selling season may be over as we approach the 15th. People fill out their forms. They realize, oops, I got to pay tax on my cryptos, and they sell their remaining cryptos or a portion of the remaining cryptos to pay the tax bill. And that led to some selling pressures for First Former Lady Barbara Bush and failing health. Well, that's not good to hear. So that could be a reason the prices is rising. Again, Yahoo Japan buys a minority stake in Tokyo cryptocurrency exchange. This is my entire theory that the big money is moving in and it will all be regulated. And this period we're having now where everything is down is a result not just of it having risen too fast, but it's really a period of 8 to 12, 18 months where there's consolidation and dust settles and institutional investors get a sense of what they can buy, what they can't buy, what products are available, what are the tokens or the ICOs or the cryptocurrencies that they can buy that are properly regulated or that don't require securities regulation and maybe are part of ETFs that get approved. I think once all that happens again, this whole thing could be back off to the races. Now, if the regulatory scheme doesn't turn out as I'm expecting it to turn out, meaning that it becomes a clampdown, well then of course they could all go down to zero. Remember, none of this is investment advice. It all could go down to zero. You could lose all your money. From what I'm seeing, though, I'm seeing that there are certain jurisdictions in the Western world that seem to be more than happy to regulate this, and there seems to be a lot of big money that's willing to put money into this. Burble dominance fell during the week for a short moment. That's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Bcash, and Litecoin, the top 5 cryptocurrencies. For a moment, EOS rose one day about 30%, but it quickly fell back, and it was Burby for a while, but Litecoin is now clearly ahead of EOS again in 5th place. Now, Litecoin stories, 10x recently added Litecoin to their wallet. That is a company I featured over a year ago. I thought it's quite intriguing that what they do is they allow you to get a card, load all of your cryptos into it, and you can pay with them. And the merchant doesn't know what you're paying with. They do it all on the back end. And basically, it makes a lot of even illiquid, like some of the tokens you never heard of, available to use to spend as cash on your card. So there's 10x, but they've added Litecoin to their 10x card. So that's basically what LitePay was going to be. So 10x is probably a bigger deal because it's probably raised money through token sales. I think 10x is in the top 50 cryptocurrencies. Not familiar with it. I don't know where it trades either. eGifter now accepts Litecoin for purchasing gift cards. So there is some movement with Litecoin in using Litecoin as a payment system. Cheap Air now accepts Litecoin and Dogecoin. And Litecoin provides details on Lightning Network. That network appears to be accelerating with more nodes being added each and every day. Abra's CEO talks to Crypto Insider about integrating Litecoin onto its platform instead of Bitcoin. It's all about interim scalability until Litecoin is ready for prime time. And now they're saying a Litecoin LitePay system could finally happen. They're talking about 10x. Now, Bitcoin, Japanese firm, is paying employees in Bitcoin. So we're getting all these hype stories back in the game. But here was the big news. Bitcoin price shoots vertically above $8,000. That was on April 12th. And we see these big spikes, these charts with the straight up 15%. It's just huge. Look, 1,000 rise. $1,000, I think it was 6,800, and it kind of drifted up to about 6,900, and then boom, 8,000. It was 1,100. That's a 17% gain right there on that chart. And the price is higher than that right now. I think it's, as I mentioned, $8,320. Now, regulations, again, it's moving in the direction of not of banning and not of shutting down, but Arizona, Colorado, and Wyoming moved to make Bitcoin a tax payment option. Here's the story on Turkey. We already covered that. Now, gold imports by India are set to slump before their latest, I forgot the name of it, I can't pronounce it, but there's another festival coming up. And it's understandable. The price of gold rises, and Indians are not buying it on credit. They're buying it with the money they have. Let's see the name of that. Auspicious Hindu days seen lacking crazy mad rush as in the past. And if the price rises, they just can't buy as much. They either don't buy or they buy less. That's what's happening in India. But India has had big import numbers the past 5 years. I do cover that. You could check that out on the Smaulgld site. If you go to the up at the top to gold and pull down, you can see something on India. World Gold Council shows that just proof analysis that adding 2, 5, or 10% in gold over the past decade to the average person's pension fund portfolio increases returns and reduces volatility. That's a point I make all the time, is gold is insurance. It's not a get-rich-quick. You put that in your portfolio, and it anchors it. Yeah. Akshay Tritiya. That is the festival that Indians buy gold, and they're saying it could be down 25% from last year. Interesting story. Bundesbank pulls out all the stops to show Germany their gold is real. Physical gold sales jumped 253% at London store as global geopolitical risk rises. Now, I'm not shocked by that. I think that makes sense. What I am shocked by is the absolute, almost non-existence of gold sale and silver sales at the U.S. Mint this year. It's very surprising. Silver industrial demand set to increase in 2018. It rebounded slightly in 2017. But remember, silver demand for gold, silver demand for coins and bars fell from 290 million ounces in 2015 down to 130 in 2017. So quite a drop on the physical demand side. Here's that semi-infinite trove of rare earth metals we were talking about earlier, found in Japan. Now, Bitcoin pumper. Here we go. I think this is Jack Dorsey. He's saying, this is ridiculous. He expects Bitcoin to become the world's single currency in about 10 years. Okay. Express. Now, Express is just a paper, but they've taken a pumping. They're a British newspaper. They were pumping Litecoin, something fierce, a couple of months ago, last month. And now they're pumping Bitcoin. April 17th holds the key to the future of the currency. The CNBC guy, Brian Kelly, he's got a fund out. He's saying he agrees with Tim Draper, 250,000 by 2022. And then he's saying we'll break $20,000 this year. There you go. The pump is back. Bitcoin going to the moon. Fast money. There's Brian Kelly. And he's pumping away his Bitcoin. And Forbes getting in on it. Bitcoin rebound could continue after tax day. That $1,000 spurt turned a lot of heads. And now it's off to the races. Didn't see any Litecoin pumps. I'll report on them when I see them. Now, gold pumpers. China lowering tariffs is a move straight from Sun Tzu. Next move, China will lower tariffs only if U.S. pays for Chinese goods in gold that the U.S. doesn't have. Then it's game over. That one I made up. I haven't heard that one yet, but we'll see. But here we go. Bill Halter, he's trotting out the COMEX default or the LBMA default, the non-delivery story. Someone's going to stand for a delivery, and then they won't have it, and it's game over. That story has been repeated by him every year for the last 5 or 6 years. It's been around for at least a decade, and it gets trotted out constantly that it's going to be game over. And just a reminder, major event to create massive gold price surge in 26 days. Well, that was a year ago, and we haven't had that massive gold surge, but it will rock the gold market and shock the world. Okay, if you're interested in why COMEX won't default, I researched it, very long article. There's a video that goes with it, explains why. That's just a bowl of nonsense. Here we go, the latest pump. The introduction of a bill by a junior congressman that has zero chance of passing has lit all these guys on fire. Oh, it's going to send gold skyrocketing because it's going to become gold-backed dollar. Mooney's bill could take gold price to the moon. Yeah, along with Bitcoin and silver and Litecoin, all going to the moon. Major alert. There's another one. Shocking moves being made in the silver market. This one's all about the commitment of traders. Major alert. Shock the world. Okay, we'll shock the world. Here's the 4 biggest signs for silver. He's talking about Malone. He's talking about the cotton story. It's always the commitment of traders, the commercials, the specs. J.P. Morgan. Something never happened before, and it's going to send silver skyrocketing. Yeah, he's talking about, there's no even point even analyzing it. The price isn't going anywhere. More proof, silver set to skyrocket. Most bullish setup for silver I've ever seen. How many times are we going to hear this? Oh, but manipulation. All right, why don't you just start and say it's manipulated and it's not going any higher? The point is, they are going to go higher. Gold and silver will go higher. They'll probably be the last assets to move higher. But everybody wants to be the one who predicts when it's going to go higher, and it's always imminent, and it's always going to shock the world, or it's a big alert, and then it doesn't happen. Again, the point is, you hold them not for shocking the world, you hold them as insurance, and they are probably, especially gold, the best insurance, in my opinion, out there for a financial crisis or inflation, something like that. And of course, the longer that goes on, then silver benefits as well. That's my rational view, but of course, you can't sell newsletters or on just basically a very rational view on what gold and silver are. You have to dress it up and you have to repeat stories and everybody has to get excited. And then if it doesn't happen, you have to come up with another story. But you know, I don't do that. Here's another one. Now, they're firing off these missiles, and of course, there's gold and silver in the missiles. A fair amount, but it's not an amount that's going to matter to the gold and silver demand dynamic. We looked up, we didn't look it up. I found this, I think it was on Russia Today. They have these ICBs, these old ones, these old Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles. And they say that they're allowing people, contractors, to go through them and withdraw the precious metals. And in each ICB, there's a substantial amount of silver. It's about 1,350 ounces. It's about 2.5 monster boxes, a little more than that. And about 57 ounces of gold. But again, it's not going to impact the gold demand or the gold supply as such. Interesting story here. Origin of ancient gold treasures revealed. I always like to see these stories. I like to send them over to Salivate Metal, and he likes to do a report on them. He shows all the pictures. Here's some of them right here. You scroll on. As we mentioned, global debt hits record $237 trillion. You could talk all you want about dollar collapse. It's not just the dollar. It is a global credit bubble. And that about does it for this week. Please, we'll have later tonight or probably Monday, I did an interview with Ann Renf on gold in the blockchain. Long interview, very interesting insights, so please be sure to check that out when it comes out. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you later in the week.